Hey guys, happy Monday. So I'm going to the county livestock show this week. We know that I'm going to be gone Monday. I'm also going to be gone Wednesday. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we're going to be in class. Now, last week with the sub was not most successful. Many of you in here, your grades dropped. I promised you we would kind of have another second chance to start over. Okay. So this week we're actually going to cover sheep. We're going to look at sheep between now and spring break, and then we're going to do sheep a little bit after spring break as well. With the focus of sheep, I have put together some videos. This was actually during COVID when I shot these for my virtual class, and they are, quite honestly, the most embarrassing, cringy videos I have ever shot in my life. Calvin, I promised you guys that I was going to try to make things a little more fun and enjoyable this week while I was gone, not give you a bunch of busy bookwork. So sit back and watch these videos. I will tell you there will be a quiz in the middle of this video that you will have to get up and go take. So please pay attention. It's very easy. It's very simple work today, but please pay attention to this. That's what I've got for you guys. So without any further whatever, here are embarrassing videos from Mr. Branscum.
Representing over 1 billion sheep in the world, we bring to you the news for sheep. Shepherd News, for herding you towards an A. Let's meet our newscast. We have Bart the Sheep, Nerd Branscum, and the host of the show, Announcer Branscum.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Shepherd News, where here at Shepherd News we are herding you towards an A. This week we're going to cover a wide range of segments in the ovine industry. What is ovine, you ask? Well, you'll know by the end of this lesson today. We're going to go to several of our newscasters who are going to teach you lessons about the sheep industry. These will help you with your assignments along the way. I'm Announcer Branscum, who will be guiding you along this journey. But it's not just me that's here reporting at Shepherd News. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Bart Branscum. Take it away, Bart.
Bah, it's Bart here, talking to you a little bit about sheep terms, a little bit about my kind. So we want to teach you a little bit today about the terms you need to know when it comes to sheep. First of all, we're going to start with the men, the males that make up our group. Now, if they're not castrated, meaning they're using them for breeding purposes, if they one day have hopes of being a father, we would call them a ram. Think about the Dodge Ram pickup trucks. So male sheep that have not been castrated, we call them a ram. Now, unfortunately, those sheep that are not going to make it to breeding, that we raise for meat purposes, they have to be castrated to improve the meat quality of those sheep. A castrated male sheep, we call them a wether. And that's W-E-T-H-E-R, not spelled like the weather outside. So we have rams that are non-castrated, and we have wethers that are castrated. Now let's move to the females. The females are called ewes, E-W-E, and that is all females. So it's not like cattle, in which we have a heifer that one day becomes a cow. All females are ewes regardless of their age. Now, when they have a baby, we call that a lamb. And I bet you guys knew that already, but a young sheep is called a lamb. And you might also remember that a term for giving birth is where we take the baby's name and we put ing at the end. So giving birth in sheep is called lambing. Now, unfortunately at the network, they make me talk about things sometimes that I'm not so comfortable talking about. And we do recognize that some of my kind, they don't work here anymore because they became meat. But I need you to know those terms for today. So if those little lambs, if they're less than a year of age and they are processed for meat, we call the meat from a young sheep under a year, we call that lamb as well. So lamb can refer to a baby sheep or it can refer to meat from sheep under a year of age. But if those sheep make it past a year and still get butchered and processed, we call that mutton. Mutton. So meat from a sheep under a year is lamb. Meat from sheep older than a year, we call that mutton. I can't believe they made me talk about this. Back to you, Announcer Branscum.
Thank you, Bart. But just knowing the words is not quite good enough. You also need to be able to look at a sheep and determine, is it a ewe, is it a ram, or a wether? To give us a little awkward lesson in sheep anatomy, we're going to turn over to the third member of our team, the member that we're kind of embarrassed, but due to budget cuts, we had to hire him. Please turn it over to Nerd Branscum. Nerd Branscum, what do you got for us?
Nerd Branscum here, and I'm the smartest member of this here sheepish team, and I'm here to teach you a little bit more about them terms. Bart earlier taught you a little bit about the different words you need to know, but just getting the words right on the quiz, that's not good enough. You gotta be able to look at the sheep, and when you look at them, you gotta be able to tell what they are, and you just can't walk into a barn and go, a ewe is a female sheep. That's not good enough. You gotta look at one and identify it. So I'm here to teach you a little bit of sheep anatomy, and the producers have asked me to keep this G or PG if I can, so I'm gonna keep this as appropriate as possible, but I want you to know some terms right here. First of all, if we talk about a ram, what's the difference in a ram and a wether? Well, I'll tell you, a ram versus a wether, we know that the wether is castrated. So when we look at them, we're going to see one thing they have in common. When we look underneath them, see that little thing right there? That's called a sheath. And the sheath is where they urinate, it's where they breed. It's that part of the male right there. And a ram and a wether, both are going to have it. But this ram has this thing right here called testicles, and we don't like to say that word, it makes us uncomfortable, but it is an important part that we're going to see in the ram. The wethers here have been castrated, which means we normally take a rubber band to cut off circulation and remove that. So if we look at a male, we're going to see a sheath underneath them, and we're going to know, oh, it's a ram or it's a wether. Then we're going to look back here, and if we see them testicles, then it's a ram. But if we don't see them testicles, it's a wether. That's the difference in those two right there. Let's move on to the female. A female is a ewe. So if I look underneath their belly, it's nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. There is no sheath because they're females. If I look behind it, I'm going to see two openings because that is the vulva and the anus. So we have those two right there. If we look underneath them, we're going to have an udder. Okay? But there may not be a full-fledged udder. It's only going to be if they have babies, right? So a young one's not going to have that. So understand that. Now, what is a ram plus a ewe? You know, this is going to be Nerd Branscum math. But a ram plus a ewe equals a lamb. A lamb. And that's a little baby sheep. Can you tell I'm a nerd, but definitely not an artiste? That's right. So we have a lamb right here. So these are the 4 terms you need to know. And then we take these animals right here and we make delicious, delicious sheep meat out of them. But there are 2 terms you should know. The first one, if we butcher these lambs, and they don't always have to be little, just younger than a year. If we butcher those lambs, then we get meat that's also called lamb. But if we butcher one of these old ones, we get something called mutton. And mutton's typically a little fattier, a little bit lower quality. The lamb's going to be a little better quality. But those are some terms that you need to know. Mr. Nerd Branscum reporting out.
Wow. And people wonder why we're the lowest rated news network out there. That was disturbing. But that's your lesson for today, ladies and gentlemen. A little bit about the sheep industry. But it's not just the 3 of us at Shepherd News that make this network run. There are lots of other people, from accounting to marketing. So today's quiz, we're going to introduce you to a couple of our other sheepest members of our team. You're going to see the picture, learn a little bit about them, and tell us exactly what term you would use to describe them. Best of luck as you meet the members of our team.
All right, I wasn't lying when I said this would be cringy. So now what's going to happen is in just a second here, the sub is going to pause this video. When they do, you're going to go down the hallway. You're going to grab a computer. You're going to bring it back, and on Google Classroom, there is a really short quiz covering the terms that I taught you today about sheep. And so in a second, they're going to pause this. You guys are going to take that. When you're done, you're going to put your computer back up. You're actually going to need a small sheet of paper for the next half of what we have here. So they're going to pause this and unpause it when we are all done taking our quiz. All right, the second part of our assignment is really simple. The sub's going to continue this video, and y'all are going to watch the rest of this. On the board are 3 questions that I need you to know these words that I'm going to cover in this next really cringy, awkward video. As you guys watch this, answer these. They're just 1 or 2 words, so not long words, not lots of writing. Answer these as we go. At the end of the hour, you're going to turn that paper in. Your grades for today are 2 grades, actually. It's going to be the quiz that you just took and the papers that you're going to write down for that. So with that in mind, watch the rest of this video, answer those questions, and turn it in, and I'll see you guys in class tomorrow.
Good day, and welcome to another edition of Shepherd's News, your most sheepish publication out there. Now, we know that sheep really have two primary purposes. The first one is meat, and really, in the United States, this is becoming the most popular use of sheep. However, there is another purpose, and some of you may be wearing wool garments today, especially in this cold weather. So, let's talk about wool production. And before we get started, one of our co-hosts, Nerd Branscum, has a rant of the day. I'm not really sure what that's meaning, but let's hear rant of the day from Nerd Branscum.
You know what really grinds my gears? PETA, standing for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. These animal rights organizations post ads that show these bloody stumps of sheep that have just been sheared or clipped. And they imply that when we take the wool off the sheep, that we're cutting them up, that we're removing their skin, that we're making them bleed, that we're making them hurt. And that is crazy. That is bananas. Understand this. Shearing sheep means to take the wool off of them. And it is an important, crucial part of animal welfare. We must remove the wool off them. And we do this in a way that doesn't cut them or anything like that. It doesn't make them bleed. It doesn't take their skin off, but it removes it. Can you imagine every single day of your life putting another coat on and then not taking it off, and the next day putting another one on top? Pretty soon you're going to be overheated. It's going to be bad. We don't want that to happen. With these sheep, just for ethical purposes, we shear them once or twice a year. Even the sheep that we don't raise for wool, we shear them and discard it, kind of like we do with our show sheep. So understand this, shearing sheep is very important. We must do it. It's an important thing for animal welfare. Rant over. Back to you, announcer Branscum.
In related news, we would like to share with you a story of Shrek, and this is a real sheep. Shrek is a merino sheep, and this is a breed of sheep that grows wool really long. In fact, most of our wool clothing can be made from breeds like Shrek, here, the merino breed. Well, Shrek actually got loose and was lost in the wild for 6 years, fending for himself. A shepherd came upon Shrek about 6 years later, and this is what he found: wool growing uncontrolled, not being clipped each year. This is actually what Shrek looked like. So people began to ask, are there health concerns with sheep like this? And experts say yes. In fact, wool this long, sheep can actually land on their backs like a turtle being stuck on their shell and not be able to get up and die. Sheep in warmer climates can actually overheat and die. So it was very important for welfare purposes to shear Shrek, and actually to be amazed that he survived this long. Look at how small he was after taking all of that wool off. He is certainly a shell of the size of a lamb that he was before. And this brings to light the importance of shearing our sheep at least annually. In related news, we would like to give our listeners just a little more background on wool production and the shearing process of sheep. Here to share some firsthand experience, considering he's been sheared many times, we'd like to turn it over to Bart Branscum. Go ahead, Bart. Tell us a little bit about shearing.
Now, as you look at this beautiful coat that I have growing on me right here, what is the fiber that grows on sheep? Well, I'm guessing all of you know the answer to this right here, but this material that's growing on the outside of me is called wool. I'm sure you all knew that. So the fiber grown on sheep is something that we call wool. Now, the process of removing the wool off sheep is called shearing. And as Nerd Branscombe went on a very long rant about, this is an important part of sheep care, whether we keep the wool or not. Now, this is a term that you will need to know. The wool taken from one sheep. So if they just sheared me and collected my wool, that would be called fleece. That would be called fleece. So fleece is the wool taken from just one sheep. Now, what about sheep that we butcher? Because you guys have learned that if we harvest or process an animal, that we want to use every part of the animal. We don't want to waste anything. So if we butcher a sheep or process them, and we have wool that's attached to the hide, so this is a horrible thought for me as a sheep. but basically it has the skin or the hide and the wool attached to it. We call that the pelt. We call that the pelt. So these are important terms that you need to know that tie into wool production with sheep. Back to you, announcer Branscum.
When we look at the wool production of sheep, understand that all breeds are a little bit different, just like we learned about with cattle, how some breeds specialize in beef production, while others are more of the dairy type. Sheep definitely have different types of wool, and it gives it different uses and value. Some wool is very, very expensive. Other wool has far less value. So if you look right here, you see the merino sheep on the left, and this is a breed that makes very fine wool. And that fine wool can be sold for lots of money. On the right side, we have another breed that's producing more of the carpet wool. So this is more coarse wool. And we have different classes based on the breeds of sheep, and that's not going to mean anything to you today. But tomorrow's newscast, we'll talk about these breeds of sheep. When we look at fiber diameter, this means how big around is the wool on these sheep. And so we have actually coarse, you can see on the left there, which is thicker. We measure this in microns. And on the far right, we have fine wool, which is a lot thinner. And typically your fine wool is going to sell for more money. We look at fiber diameter, and when we look throughout the sheep, you're going to notice different areas of the sheep have better wool. Some areas are going to be a little bit dirty. You can probably think underneath when the sheep lays down. And as we move back towards its rear, we're going to get a little nastier wool. Another term we want you to know is crimp. And crimp is the waviness in the wool fiber. How wavy is it? How much does it flow? Um, so once we shear the sheep, we harvest that wool. Now we have to process it because some of it's not any good. We have to remove the vegetable matter, which is any type of hay, grass, seeds, things that will stick onto their wool. We have to look at tag. What is tag, Mr. Branscum? This is wool that has manure attached to it. So we obviously don't want that on our clothing. It's really too tedious, so we just cut it off. Then we do a process called skirting. So this is removing all the stain, undesirable, the tags, any part of the fleece that is not good. And so we cut that stuff off. And what we have left over is called the yield. And this is the percentage of the wool that's actually good. And the higher that yield is, obviously the more money I make. And we're going to look at about a 40 to 70% yield on that right there. Okay. Next, I'd like to turn over. Looks like Nerd Branscum was buzzing in for one additional thing that he would like to add in.
I just want to add one thing, your announcership, and that is this nasty, greasy stuff that's on sheep. And if you've ever handled a sheep, it gets under your fingernails, it's grimy, and it stinks. It's kind of nasty. And it's called lanolin. 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 And lanolin is the grease-like substance that gets underneath the wool of sheep. But it's a good thing. It annoys me, but it's a good thing. They use it for greases and cream, but it protects the sheep's wool and the sheep's hide. If we were to wash the sheep a lot and get rid of that lanolin, it would actually cause them to break out in fungus. That's not a good thing. So know that greasy substance is called lanolin. Nerd Branscum signing out.
There you have it. Another edition of Shepherd News, where I am still trying to herd you towards an A in this class. I hope you found everything you needed to answer your questions, and we will see you tomorrow for another edition as we travel around the world to look at breeds of sheep. Signing out.